Welcome in, Braves. Today, he is Kyle. I am Ben, and I know that we keep beating a dead horse, but you might as well do it. And the reason being is because Ronald Acuña Jr. continues to just show out, at least in numbers, even though he's not even playing. He is Mr. Baseball. So says Mookie himself in a podcast that he had. The numbers are backing it. The league is onto it, and MLB even features him on numerous times throughout their playoff promos. And Kyle, I think it's all well deserved.
Yeah, and then there's MLB.com who lists the top 30 players in the postseason, and then he's ranked second behind Mookie Betts. And then you look at ESPN's rankings, and they have Acuna number one. We'll get to those in a bit. But Acuna is well deserving of the MVP race. I don't think it should be even close. He is Mr. Baseball. He has broken a record that may never be set again. So there's no reason not to vote for him.
Yeah, and Lindsay and I have talked about that ad nauseum because of the people blaming the bases and all that kind of stuff. Well, take a look at what Trey Turner's doing for Philadelphia. He was known as a base stealer when he was in LA, and his numbers are not just extravagant. And he's playing on the same type bases that Granted, his numbers also of him getting on base are not very good either because he had a terrible first half of the season. Philly seems to have embraced him in the second half. He got a standing ovation when they did intros and when he came to the plate in their opening game against the Marlins. And we'll get to the Marlins and Phillies here in a little bit because by the weekend and after you guys watch this, you're going to be seeing us play the Marlins or the Phillies. And all signs are leading to the Phillies at this point. And the reason being is just because they took game one of that series. ESPN, you talked about that. They released their top 40 players, and I didn't go really beyond 10. And the reason being is because the Braves dominated 5 of the top 10 spots, actually 5 of the top 7 spots. And let's run through them and talk about what they bring to the team. And we'll start from the bottom, go bottom up, because you mentioned Ronald being number 1. We'll get to him in a little bit. But number 7 in the top 10 is Austin Riley, the third baseman. And Austin has Lindsay mentioned it in the last pod, he's had pretty much a ridiculous year. He's gotten so much, his strikeouts are down. He's hitting to all sides of the field. And he is one of the quote unquote MVPs of the team.
And it's crazy. No one talks about it just because of how ridiculous Ronald Acuña Jr. has been playing, and Michael Harris as well, for that matter. Also, Riley flying under the radar. His defense has improved. He's improved at the plate, hitting all sides of the field. He's improved hitting the off-speed pitch, and he's still got light tower power to every side of the field. He's better than he was last year, and he was fringe MVP last year.
Yeah, I mean, all-star indeed, and he's proven that. You mentioned something that a lot of people don't talk about. That is his defense. I don't think people realized when he first got into the league and he was taking over for Chipper. We were so used to seeing Chipper make routine plays, and a lot of that had to do. Number one, Chipper was good, but number two, those veteran moves where he knew how to play balls that most people didn't. He had mastered the move of coming in on a slow roller and barehanding it and throwing people. And now Riley has got those same attributes. As a matter of fact, Chipper, when he was in the booth earlier this week, earlier this year, Riley made a backhand stab, and Chipper said, "I don't know that I could have done that."
Yeah, and it's crazy because people forget that we drafted Austin Riley as a pitcher.
Mm-hmm.
He came in as kind of a two-way player that was more known of as a pitcher, and then we stuck him over at third base, and the bat came along, and now here we are, a guy that was an all-star for 2 years in a row at third base.
Speaking of which, when you brought that up, Michael Harris II also it was a pitcher, and actually got on up there into the 90s from what they've said. I've never seen it. I hadn't seen any footage of it. However, when we've only had to do it once this year, throw a position player, they don't let either one of those two pitch.
Yeah, I guess they don't want to kind of throw off their rhythm, but if you were to pitch a position player, those two guys are guys that have experience there and know how to get it done on the bump. But I guess they don't want to kind of throw them off and get them in that kind of mental space.
They went to Lopez. Arcia was going to go earlier in the year in that big blowout game, and they never put him out there, which he was disappointed. And then that's what prompted it as they asked Harris II about it, and he said, I was begging them to let me out there.
Oh
And
yeah, of course.
and they would not let him do it. So that's usually this telltale sign when a player of any, whether it be football, basketball, baseball, anything, when they start begging a coach to let them go, that coach knows that it's too good to be true, or manager in this case. So number 6, as we move down just from Austin Riley, Spencer Strider. You could possibly even have him up there even higher. He is the league's only 20-game winner.
Yeah, the power of the stash. 20 games, 20 wins this year for Spencer Strider. And he looks like he just walked off the set of Tombstone, but he will come out there and just throw gas. And we're going to need him big time in the NLDS because I believe he's going to start game 1. And he's going to need to set the tone against the Phillies, who I believe is going to 2-0 the Marlins tonight. But we'll see after the game ends. But Strider he has been a revelation for the past 2 years for us. We were trying to find pitching last year, and then we call up this guy named Spencer Strider. Nobody knows anything about him. And he just comes in and blows everybody away. And now it's like, this guy might be your ace.
Yeah, and his efficiency is much better than other people that are ahead of him as far as records are concerned. Even Smoltz. I mean, Smoltz was used to going 7, 8, sometimes complete games. Strider's not going to do that. You're going to get 6 out of him. They may put him out there in the 7th, but a lot of times this year they'd end up pulling him in the 7th or 6 and a third or something of that nature. So you're never going to see him pull a John Smoltz complete game or a Tom Glavine complete game like you used to back in the day. And I mean, one of those reasons too, though, is because Strider is throwing 99. And as they said the other day, the last time out, his first pitch is 99. His last pitch is 98.5. So he doesn't lose anything while he's out there, which is impressive. So he comes in at the number 6 spot. Then it gets down to 4, who could also be listed ahead because he is the RBI and home run leader in Matt Olson, the first baseman.
Yeah, I mentioned this in an article the other day that if Acuña and Mookie Betts weren't having the season that they're having this year, Matt Olson would be very likely could be the NL MVP. It would be between him and Freddie Freeman, as ironic as that is. But those two would be the two guys leading the way because they're 3rd and 4th in the MVP voting. Olson has been everything the Braves needed him to be and more. I know you said just come in, hit like 280. That's fine by me, but he comes in, he's hitting over 280, and he leads the league in homers and RBIs. And his fielding hasn't been as great as I expected it to be, but his bat, on the other hand, has made up for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, anytime he gets a couple of home runs in a game, I don't care if he boots a ball over it first. I'm fine with it. And his fielding is getting a little bit better than what it was last year. I think he's just getting more comfortable with the guys, and he's getting used to throws coming from the other side of the field, even though, he's had to switch up shortstops again. Now the Arcia seems to be the guy. I think it's going to be even better defensively. The thing is with Olson, when he has had a bad game in the field, it's usually something that's just like stupid, like a slow roller that he just loses concentration on it. It's like he makes the hard plays and making a pick from Austin Riley deep at 3rd to get a guy out. And then you get a routine ground ball that comes to him and goes right between his legs. And it's like, what are we doing here? So
he's overthinking it is what he's doing.
Yes, I think it's exactly what's happening with him. So, but that's fine. As long as he's not overthinking at the plate, and he's doing very well with that as well. Drop down to number 3, and a guy that seems to have bounced back, and we will see him and we'll talk about that here in a little bit as he ended up pitching a little bit earlier this week, and that is Max Fried, who pretty much has been on that streak. He and Strider have kept the Braves above water during the second half of the season.
Yeah, they have kept us afloat when we've had a bevy of pitching injuries. Fried, known as the ace of this team, and then you have Morton, and then you have Strider. But Fried was the guy that helped lead us to the 2021 World Series, and he could help lead us to a 2023 World Series. And we're not talking about it because it's going to be kind of an off-season thing, but he's got a contract due up where we're either going to have to pay him or let him go. And it's kind of put up or shut up time as far as Max Fried is concerned. We know he's got the injury to his throwing hand, and that's been prevalent throughout the past few years. Hopefully that has kind of gotten better. As you mentioned, he pitched yesterday. We'll get to that in a little bit, but we need Max Fried to be Max Fried.
We also need Ronald Acuña Jr. to be Ronald Acuña Jr., and he comes in at the number 1 spot. Again, in ESPN's top 40, Acuña Jr. is in the number 1 spot. In MLB's or MLB.com, he's in the number 2 spot. I think that's just because they're pandering to the LA crowd,
LA.
because even Mookie has said that he's the best player in baseball. My hope is come the weekend, we don't see Acuna pressing a little too much, because the expectations are there for him. I think people have high expectations. They expect him to get on right away, to take second base on the very first pitch, even maybe even not even wait a pitch and take third base. And so I don't want. He's still a young guy. People don't realize he's still young at heart, and he's still. I'm not saying he's immature. He's matured a lot, but as baseball wise, he's still a young guy and got a lot of years left in him. And so you could see where maybe he might press a little bit when the weekend comes around, but I hope he just lets loose and plays his game and has fun.
And you got to remember, in 2021, when we won the World Series, we didn't have him. He wasn't a part of that. He had torn his ACL and was not a part of that team. He played last year in the NLDS, and he didn't do all that well. So the stage is going to be big, and I think he's ready for it. He's just going to have to settle in and play the way he loves to play the game, and not try to overthink it like Matt Olson was doing and be like, oh, I have to go out here and hit a home run every time I'm at the plate. We have the best lineup in all of baseball. You've got 8 guys behind you that could produce at any given day. So just go out there and play the game the way you've been playing, and we'll be fine.
However, I will say he is a tone setter. He steps up there and leads off the NLDS with a home run, and that crowd will go absolutely bananas, and it will completely shut down who they're playing. It probably will be the Phillies, as you said earlier, because it looks like the Marlins have kind of mailed it in, and they're doing Marlins things. At least they were in game 1. So we shall see. Speaking of which, since it is an off week, it's not been an off week for the Braves. They took more time off last year to rest. This year, they're not pressing, and they're not doing a bunch of stuff that you would do during the season, but they did do an inter-squad game because it's trying to keep the guys fresh because of things like you just said with Ronald Acuña Jr. last year. He was hot going into the playoffs. They had time off, and then all of a sudden he went really cold, and it probably ended up costing the Braves a chance to move forward and beat the Phillies last year. They decided to completely change it up and do things differently this year. Max Fried did take the mound. However, he had a protective sleeve on his finger, the one that's hurt. But we've been told that was just precautionary, so he doesn't rub that blister and make it worse.
Yeah, and an important thing from the game yesterday, the inter-squad game, Fried actually got outpitched by Smith Shawver, who probably got himself an NLDS spot after the way he pitched yesterday. 5 innings, gave up 1 hit, 5 strikeouts, and 2 walks. So he looked good yesterday in the split in inter-squad games, kind of like a backyard baseball type deal.
Right.
But he looked good. He outdueled Max Fried, who gave up 3 runs.
Had Ozuna playing first on one of the inter-squads. So,
Yep.
However, I'm not shocked at that. They talked about that earlier in the season. He asked Ron Washington to work with him on the infield in case there was some sort of injury, and Austin Riley, they didn't want to move him to first. They needed another one. Ozuna volunteered earlier in the year to do so.
Yeah, and it's good to have that kind of depth, because if something happens to Matt Olson, who's going over there? You want to put Austin Riley over there? Okay, then who's going to third?
Yeah,
it's a big ordeal, but it's a lot less stressful when you can just put your DH over there at first base and be fine with it.
One guy that stood out, and you and Lindsay talked about this a little bit in the Discord, and that is a 17, 18-year-old prospect that the Braves acquired that is a local kid in Atlanta, North Atlanta High School, who really showed out in this inter-squad game.
Yeah, round 5 of the 2023 MLB draft, the Atlanta Braves took a player from their own backyard, Isaiah Drake, 6 foot, 180 pounds. He bats left, throws right. He's a center fielder, came from North Atlanta High School, runs a sub 6'2", 60-yard dash. So he is flying, which when you grade out hit tools, run tools, that kind of stuff, an 80 is the highest grade you can get. He's an 80 runner. He throws up to 93 miles an hour from the outfield, so he's got a cannon. He has a lot of swing and miss, so what's been really lacking in his game is he needs more consistency with the bat. That would kind of put him over the top and really make him a steal. Great power to both sides of the field. He was a Georgia Tech commit prior to signing with Atlanta. He was going to stay at home anyway. And his family bloodline is very strong as far as athletics are concerned. He's the little brother of Kenyon Drake, former Alabama running back and an NFL running back.
Yeah, the bloodline is there as far as the talent that putting people in professional sports for sure. This could be the answer to, with a few years left, with the platooning of them doing it in left. You keep talking about a left fielder, finding a steady left fielder. Instead of going out and trading for one, you may have a 17-year-old kid sitting in your organization that made a push for that during this inter squad game because he had a triple.
He had a triple off the wall against Colin McHugh. I think he hit it off of the chop house wall and used that 80 grade speed that we talked about. He's got power and he's got a lot of speed. And when we drafted him, he became one of the top hitters on our prospect list, no matter what the age or what the affiliation. He's one of the best hitters we have in our program.
Always good stuff. As we talked about, 5 out of the top 10 released by ESPN saying that the Braves are some of the best in the business. If it makes you feel any better, it looks like it's a collision course between Atlanta and LA. I'm not counting my chickens before they hatch. I do understand that there's a game that has to, or a couple of games that have to take place before then, before that's to happen. Even LA's got to win before that's to happen. Who knows if that'll take place? But I'll call them dishonorable mentions as Freddie Freeman and Mookie Betts also in that top 10. So 9 out of the top 10 are going to be playing against one another come here and a little bit later on the playoffs if things fall as they should. He's Kyle. I'm Ben. Braves Today, Braves_today on the Twitter, bravestoday.com. Thank you, man.
Yep. Have a good one.